Welcome to Conversations with Argon Law, our limited edition podcast series. I'm John Gallagher, the director here at Argon Law, and today we're welcoming Katrina Brennan from SRJ Walker Wayland Accountants to talk to us about structuring for success. So, and I guess what that is we'll be sharing how we can help business owners get their structure right from the outset. Katrina, perhaps just introduce yourself.
Katrina Brennan from SRJ Walker Wayland, Business Accountants and Advisors. Happy to be here today. This is one of the most important topics that I know we cover off on with businesses that we take on and look after. And we also take it very seriously about having them liaise with legal around this topic, because I think we both need to work in unison to make a difference in their world and set them up for success right from the start.
Great. Okay. Well, perhaps, so what do you see as structuring for success and meaning precisely?
I think it's one of the most important things in business in general, and that could probably be also one of the biggest misconceptions from a lot of the businesses, because a lot of them are thinking it's something that is just done at the start. It's a set and forget. And also the understanding of what the actual entities are is another misconception, because it could, I think they all think that if they're in one, they're safe, as long as someone has set them up and haven't really considered all of the implications. But it's one of the big things that we take very seriously when we're taking on clients. It's something that they bring to the table, and a lot of them can be set up incorrectly or haven't moved on from their initial setup.
Yeah.
Right from the start. So for us, it gives them a better chance for success in their business and in general, and something to be taken very seriously.
There's a few different types of business legal structures. So what do you see those sort of main ones?
If I just backtrack, I mean, when they're sort of considering any of these, a lot of the things that they need to consider is how it affects their business tax liabilities, how it affects their personal liabilities, what are the ongoing costs, and also how it affects them, when it comes to exposure. And keeping them actually safe from any exposure that might affect them personally. Yeah. These are big factors and misconceptions as well. So what we see a lot is people coming in as sole traders, and a lot of the time they're set up like that for a reason, because it's low cost. They don't know whether the business is actually going to succeed, and they haven't got a lot of cash at that time, so they don't want to outlay a lot of money, and that is fine for the start. But as you know, down the track, if you're looking at scaling up and all throughout retirement, it's not exactly the best situation to be in.
No.
So sole traders are the most simplistic, tax-wise. All of the money goes into their own individual tax returns and is taxed at individual tax rates. They do have a lot of exposure, so not as much protection.
Yeah.
Everything is in their own name. You then go through to partnerships. We don't see a lot of them anymore, and we don't probably advise on a lot of them these days. It's not a separate legal entity, still is in the format of individuals, so they are still very much exposed. Main difference is that it's more than one that's actually managing the operations and the organisations.
And often in that scenario too, there's personal liability for the partners, not just for their own actions, but personal liability for the actions of their partners as well.
That's right. And legally, documents, especially with those type of entities, in partnership agreements and same with shareholders agreements, are normally not in play, with a lot of people that come to the table with those type of entities.
That's right. They just sort of happen organically without people even realising that they're in any particular legal relationship.
Yeah, exactly. So the next entity was the trust setup. And as you know, that is quite formal. There is a trust deed in place. Its operations are run by the actual trustee, though. To give extra protection to that entity, it's generally set up as a company so that there is less risk. So a lot of...
It doesn't need to be a company, though.
It doesn't need to be a company.
The individual can still be the trustee.
Exactly. And sometimes if that trust entity is just actually being utilised as a shareholder or an investor of a company, which some family businesses operate out of too, and then have the trust as a shareholder, individual trustees. It depends on, we can cover and protect people, as you know, as much as we can, but
when the individual is the trustee, they're still taking on all the personal responsibility of the business. Whereas if they use a company, they get some of the protections of the corporate veil.
That's right.
So far more common to see if you're going to the expense of setting up a trust, then doing a company at the same time makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's right. So family businesses, are generally run out of their, quite easily with less tax implications if set up right, because everyone is different and every situation is different. So for some families, it might be really beneficial because they have people to distribute to and, and get the most tax effective way of distributing. And even though the funds are still going to individuals, it still could be quite tax effective. And some people like to be able to have more flexibility and accessibility to their funds. Next is the company, as you know, separate legal entity, a little bit more expensive to set up and sometimes operate. Biggest thing, with that entity is a lot of businesses fully don't understand it and don't understand that it is that separate legal entity, harder to take money out of. And
so you're talking about here a company either by itself or as a trustee?
A company by itself for trading, so business operating out of the company.
Although some of these problems sort of relate to when it's a trustee as well.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
People confusing where the money should go in terms of revenue and cash that they're holding.
Yeah. And also I think if people are in business in a company, and especially a family business, because it is the directors and the shareholders that are running the operations, and a lot of the time they are family members. So the concept of that company being a separate legal entity sometimes is very foreign to them, and them having access to the funds and being able to take out a lump sum and renovate their house or what have you. Of course, depending on many different situations, but not understanding that. And I suppose that is but there's so many different advantages to it as well when you're running out of the company because of the tax effectiveness, and being a cap at the 30 cents in the dollar or the 25 cents in the dollar in comparison to individual rates. There is that protection.
Yeah. So particularly when you're at a stage in your business where you're wanting to reinvest any cash flow coming through back into the business. It certainly is a useful mechanism at that point.
Yeah, definitely. And, when we were talking about at the start, we're setting it up. It sort of all flows into setting up for success, but setting up right from the start. But I suppose there's two sides to that. Setting it right up from the start so that there's an ease of if you were to change, if you were to restructure or have to. These days, especially on the coast, there's a lot of businesses that start out just as a family business, didn't think that they'd be scaling and growing as much as they thought that or thought that it could be as big as what it is, wanting to entice and bring in, different investors or, different parties for employees to engage or, and in comes that succession planning. So setting up right from the start, and you might think that you're jumping too quick from here to there, because you're just little. But sometimes setting up in that sort of format and structure is, they're finding as the sole trader, as the partnership, or even sometimes as a trust, because it is a family trust, it's harder to bring in investors.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, from a legal perspective, it's hard to be sort of selling someone a share of a trust. You really the trust is an all or nothing thing, so you need to sort of then extract a business from the trust in some way. So there's pros and cons to all of these different vehicles. And is there one particular structure that you find is the most common one that you're setting up if someone comes to you and wants to sort of have a working system that might last them for some time into the future?
What we do is a pretty thorough check of where they are at that point. They could be starting out, they could be, in the middle of things. And a lot of the time we're getting clients that are coming already, set up and have been for quite some time. So I like a planning session is done with them for even 2 to 3 hours, because it's looking at the whole of the business and then where they're going, so that then we can come up with, whether they're risk adverse, whether they, want that flexibility to be able to, and look forward as well, because it's always looking forward, not always looking at where they are right now in the situation. So we do a lot of that analysis, and, generally it is a company because that works out best for their protection.
Yes.
But a lot of the time too, it can be the discretionary trust, which is quite functional, tax effective. But we put all the details on the table because, you have to look at, it has to be functional for buying another business or selling, but also set up for that scalability and growth that we were talking about before, where they can invite parties in, because you have people that say, well, we'll never have anybody else within our business. That can change. I've heard that before. But and a trust is what they want to do, and they have people to distribute to, and they're happy with that. And they might say, well, we want this to then flow on into succession, and estate planning.
So I mean, what I see commonly is you're having a company as the trading entity, but then all of the shares in that company might initially be owned by another company, which is a trustee, or by individuals who are trustees of the trust. So the trust doesn't actually own the business.
That's right.
The first company owns the business, and then the trust owns the shares in the business owning company.
That's right.
And that sort of gives you sort of a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, especially if there was to be growth within the group.
Yeah.
I mean, what we find also is we might have someone who starts out as this company and their shares are held by that trust, but then they want to go national. And, they want, for each state, they want to have a different company set up. That being the case, you've got that central point of trust and the trustee company, which is then holding, all of the shares, so as a family group within this bigger operation, that's in play at the time. And definitely the companies, when it comes to people that are interested in growing nationally, growing overseas, but it's all of the other things that come with it too. When they're growing in size, you have IP.
Yes.
Which is a different topic in itself, but, you might have that in a completely separate entity as well.
Yeah, intellectual property is sort of something that is kind of enduring, and you if you can keep it out of the firing line for risk, then, and you're prepared to, I guess, spend the extra money, then often it makes sense to sort of house the IP in a separate entity again, and then license the use of it back to the business.
Yeah. So we would often, at different times as the businesses get bigger, and we have had on the coast businesses that have started off with just this one entity vessel of a company, and then have grown and had to advise, but always advice, not always coming from us, legal, always in partnership with that.
What's a real-life example of where someone's run into trouble with their structure and come to you for some advice?
One of the big things we see is it's from a set and forget perspective as well, is when they've been set up in an entity right from the start. And we have a lot of people coming in with trusts, and as I said, trust can be a really good way to run operationally your business and be tax effective, but depending on your own circumstances. So what you find in business a lot, you hope it's not the case, but a lot at the beginning there's losses, that are building for a few years. So you're not really aware of any tax implications or how it's going to affect you. And then that you start building and growing and becoming successful, which is awesome, but haven't really been explained how it works. And the effectiveness of being in a trust for you personally might not be the right way to go if you're the only person that it gets distributed to, as well as you might actually have another salary and wage that's coming from other places or within the business. We often get businesses.
So trusts are most effective where you've got multiple family members or at least a spouse who can sort of share in some of the excess income.
Yeah, sharing the excess income, as well as, if you're not generating another salary, it could be just the distributions, or you may pay yourself a salary which actually decreases, the profit within the trust, so therefore minimalising the amounts coming out down the bottom. But we've often had people come to us after a financial year has passed prior, and then another financial year has passed, and they have done great things and been very successful and have moved past the losses, but not understanding the implications of how it then affects them tax-wise. So in the whole planning stage of when coming on board and reviewing everything, and they have ended up with very large tax bills. That because it's been and gone, can't control, not aware of those, and they continue because you're always dealing with a year behind. It affects them for the next couple of years, and that's about not understanding the structure, but also.
So if they'd come to you sooner, you could have sort of
looked at
cushioned those blows.
Yeah, informing them then, but also what ultimately happens with some of those circumstances, if that circumstance is not going to change and it's going to continually go to them, to be more tax effective, they're better off being in a company.
Yeah.
As long as they're fully comfortable with that, because even though sometimes things might be the right outcome for people tax effective wise, they might still be more comfortable in that where it is that entity that they have more control and flexibility, even though it still is the trustee.
Yeah, that's right. And you can take them through all the alternatives and explain the consequences and the tax issues. And then ultimately it's got to be a client decision.
Exactly, as long as they have all the information, which I think is missing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So that's why if they incorporate it with going and seeing people like yourself for the legal side, and then also getting the tax advice too. But what you're giving them also is that advice to cover off on, all aspects of them personally.
Yeah.
Because that is another misconception, that they think it's just business. Not thinking that it's going to affect them in their personal lives.
Yeah, that's right. And once it affects them in their personal lives, it can flow onto their home and
they
to
could
everything
lose
that
houses.
they own. Yeah.
They could pay a lot of tax, estate planning wise. It's huge, the implications.
Yeah.
And it's just like when we get really passionate about wills, John.
Yeah.
If people don't have their structures set up right, big issues and implications can affect their family. And I think that's probably the key. Let them know that it affects their family and their family life and personally, and maybe they'll be more, And I think it is happening more and more.
Yeah.
Years ago, not so much.
So in terms of the question of when's the best time to take action like this, I mean, I guess it's going to depend on the individual and the stage that they're at, but probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I mean, I think you pointed out, if people were wanting to bring in investors, sometimes you can't always plan in advance for that, because some people think and stick to that until the end of their business life, that they never want to bring in outside parties. But, that could be a change because of a change in your life and what you want to do, and you want to have more flexibility and have other people maybe taking control. That is very much a time to look at changing and how you're going to make that happen. If you're a sole trader as well, I mean, you can employ staff, but the protection of a company, the protection within a trust, more so in a company, looking at contracts. And if you're going into a new venture, and just say you were sitting in a particular entity and you're going to take on the world, looking at those contracts and know it, you've got to make the change then, so that, as you would advise, so the new contracts are in the right name, and it's not this big kerfuffle to have to change it over. Because sometimes it can be to save money, once again, where they go, we don't want to spend the money on the extra advice or extra details around changing the entity. But that could cause major dramas and, totally squash your dreams and passions because you haven't set it up right and you've got the contracts in the old name. Everything can be resolved.
I mean, sometimes there are tax consequences to these restructures that you can't really avoid, but they're not going to get, those consequences aren't going to get any better as you continue to succeed. They'll probably only get worse. So there are things like capital gains tax and transfer duty that can be calculated and factored into any decision that you take.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the biggest thing is just being informed, so you have all of the facts. Big believer in that. Have all the facts. We can't change their mind for them or make them do anything, but as long as they have all the facts, but both sides. There's so many different areas that legal needs to be addressed in all situations. Like, as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But from our perspective, it's something that we're very passionate about. We are not just the go-to to finalise everything. It needs to have both sides of the story because it could affect them in a different way. For sure.
So there's all different stages of the cycle, and I guess one area that we see a lot of is towards the end when the business owner has been successful, they're looking at what we call business succession, and it's sometimes only then that they take a close look at the structures that they're using and find that they're not sort of ideal for the way they want to exit. So I guess the sooner they come to us and talk to us about it, the better.
Well, we've chatted about that before, and I think it is known on the coast. There's a lot of family businesses that have been around for many years. A lot of different industries. We try and focus on succession planning and pre-planning. I'm finding it's really changed in the last few years, possibly because of COVID and people rethinking their lives and wanting to be more protected. But I am finding a lot more people are wanting to talk about it because, and they're younger, because I suppose it's the philosophy of, having all your ducks in a row because, preparing your business if you were going to sell it tomorrow, because who knows, you might have to. Preparing your business, as if you needed to go to the bank and borrow a couple of $1 million. You know what I mean? Like you don't at the moment, but you might have to. So if those accounts are sale ready, but succession ready, and all of the above at any given time, and you might only be 30.
Yeah.
But then you're actually ready for whatever lies ahead. But
absolutely, and it adds value to everyone involved with the business, not just the owners, but staff and any people, third parties dealing with you. It's just it's so much better to sort of have that clear structure and the best structure in place.
Well, it sets you up for success, as we talked about at the beginning.
That's right. Okay. So, I guess any advice that you'd have to anyone who sort of hasn't reviewed their structure for a while?
We do a lot of business health checks, but I would say do a business like a health structure, like check your health on your structure that you currently have, and I would do that regularly because people have things happening all the time. I mean, some people have a massive jump in revenue, a couple of $1 million even, and it's sort of a time to stop and assess even at that point. Because you know how they say that you're on the run and businesses grow from here to here, and you don't have time to assess anything in that time. Structure is one of the big things to have a look at and make sure that you are set up and ready for what's coming next. Because obviously you're on a massive big growth path. So I would have a business health check on your structures or make it part of. How when people say I've got a business plan and it's in a drawer and it's really thick and nobody looks at it, that to me is not like a health check or a plan, that you're reviewing and looking over at all times. The structure should be part of that business plan.
Yeah.
It's not just operational.
No.
But it's part of and incorporates everything that's going on in your world. So I think it's just as important as wills.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Well, thank you so much, Katrina. That's been fabulous to chat about that today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So how can people contact you at SRJ Walker Wayland?
We've got a website, www.srjww.com, a lot of W's, .au, or, reach out to me, Katrina Brennan, at srjww.com.au. We have a fabulous team. The team is all involved. It's not just me that will probably be the contact. And, come and see us anytime.
All right. So thank you very much to everyone. And, of course, Argon Law, if you want to contact us. We have a website as well with lots of W's. So please track us down, and we'd love to talk to you about structuring a business at any point. So thank you.